Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Friday Ramblings. I'm here, as always, when it is time to ramble, which is always on a Friday. Let's get right down to it, folks, because we have not done this for a little bit of time, so let's not waste any. Recently, we concluded Wrestlemania 40, the two-day event that changed wrestling landscape forever. So I thought, for the wrestling fans, we would do something a little different, and I would discuss my personal top 10 WrestleMania main events. Not in quality, but in how much I enjoy rewatching them. See, there's a key difference here. The most quality wrestling match may not necessarily be the one you want to watch over and over again. It may not be the first one when somebody's like, dude, what's a great WrestleMania main event to watch? Which I know sounds insane, sounds counterproductive, but bear with me. There's a lot of factors that determine greatest match. It could be, the actual physical moves were just super on point. Could be, it's, a matter of this was the most, just epic storyline, so every little second of it felt like an absolute legend. But I'm talking about most fun, which is just a mixture of all the elements. Now again, I am specifying here, before people want to start getting into too many debates, we are talking about specifically main events, i.e. the last match on the card. Not the most anticipated one, not the most hyped one, not the title match necessarily, although 9 out of 10 times it is, but the last match, because traditionally the last match is the main event, and I do like my traditional wrestling rules. Let's get right on to it. Number 10 is Yokozuna versus Brett from WrestleMania 10. Haha, 10 and 10. Now I love watching and rewatching this match for the simple fact that it was right smack dab in the middle of the Brett Owen feud, and even though it was Brett's second championship, he had won the first one at a house show and only held it for a brief period. So this one really was more of his coming out party championship. Heck, the fact that he won it at WrestleMania. The fact that, as I said before, that it's in the middle of the Brett Owen feud, which is, in my humble opinion, one of the greatest feuds in WWE history, is great because the title win was a major point in how they kept the feud going. Earlier in the night, Brett had competed against Owen and had lost on a surprise roll-up. So when Brett subsequently wins the title off Yokozuna and takes the shine off Owen, Owen sees him beating Brett just before this as a good sign that he is the number one contender. He would, of course, cement this but later in the year by winning King of the Ring before challenging for the belt at SummerSlam in one of WWE's greatest steel cage matches of all time. It is a great match. Yokozuna, at this point, was near the end of his main event run, but still in pretty good shape physically. This was before he started gaining a lot of weight in the last years of his WWE run, and so beating him still meant something. Yokozuna, of course, is part of the Noah family, along with Roman Reigns, the Usos, and so many, many others. May Yokozuna rest in peace. Next up at number 9, we have the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels versus Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania 14. This is the match where Austin ascended to the main event scene, won his first championship, and with Michaels needing to take 4.5 years off for a back injury, became the undisputed face of the company. But more importantly, led into the red-hot Austin McMahon angle, as now Austin was a champion that would not be a corporate champion. This match had a lot of backstage worries about it at the time due to Shawn Michaels' behavior not being the best he had had at any point in his career. He himself has admitted, look, this is when he had been doing drugs, of course his back problems, playing politics. There was a lot going on in Shawn Michaels' head that was not positive. There was concern that he would not be able to do what he needed to do to make sure Austin got the crowning moment he needed, or even potentially didn't want to. But everything went off perfectly. They had a wonderful match. These two Texans made sure that WrestleMania history was made, and the involvement of Iron Mike Tyson cements this whole thing as a match you need to see not just once, but over and over again. Next up, we have Flair versus Savage at WrestleMania 8. I know most people, when they talk about top 10 WrestleManias, talk about Steamboat Savage. Many people debate Steamboat Savage is potentially the greatest WrestleMania match of all time, but it was not the main event. And I'm talking about main event matches here. Plus, let's be honest, how can you not love Ric Flair? How can a Ric Flair match that's for a world championship? You got Ric Flair, you got a world championship, you got a huge stage for that championship match. Big lights at WrestleMania. This is a perfect formula for a match that, combined with the uniqueness and high talents of the Macho Man Randy Savage, makes sure that everything will go right one way or the other. And when it's all said and done, you have a match that is worth watching over and over again, and is certainly a great pick when non-wrestling fans need a little something to realize why these guys are still talked about so many years after their prime, and why this match is talked about so many years after it. Next up, this one is a little bit selfish, and that is The Miz versus John Cena at WrestleMania 27. This one is, in a lot of ways, it's an honorary mention, because even though, yes, this match did set up the John Cena Rock feud that led to two back-to-back WrestleMania main events, the once in a lifetime and twice in a lifetime matches that were one generation versus one generation dream matches for the fans, and of course the in-between plot line involving Rock winning the title off Punk, and things happening, Punk not being very thrilled with that at the time. It's a thing. It's a whole nother video all by itself. The thing is, the Miz vs. John Cena match was at WrestleMania 27, which took place in Atlanta, Georgia, and I had floor seats. Yep, that's right. I'm inducting this match simply because, yes, the Miz was great in his role as the heel champion. John Cena was John Cena at WrestleMania, which is one of the best of all time. The Rock showing up and doing what he does, which is plant the seeds for a match you are going to spend the rest of your life waiting to see. You don't care how long it takes that build to pay off, because The Rock's just planted a seed in your head that you want to see bloom. Seeing all this play out live in front of my eyes, it inherently elevates it. I will always think fondly of this match because it was the main event of the only WrestleMania I have attended personally. So there you go. I didn't want to rank it too super high, but I didn't also want to put it just at number 10 because, personal feelings account for a lot when you are discussing your personal list. At number 6, and rounding out the bottom half of this list, we have Orton versus Daniel Bryan versus Batista at WrestleMania 30. This was the payoff to an angle that had been going off and on, kind of stop-start, mostly start, since the previous SummerSlam when Daniel Bryan beat John Cena, only to have Orton immediately cash in Money in the Bank and take the title off Daniel Bryan. And Daniel began the chase. Batista returning at the Royal Rumble threw a little bit of a cog in the works. However, this was the Yes Movement. This was Daniel Bryan at his most popular. And Orton and Batista both did everything they did to make sure when Daniel Bryan won the championship, similar to Brett's winning it and then re-winning it at WrestleMania 10 later, that this time when Daniel Bryan held the title high, it meant the world because people could feel in the air. And the way the whole story went, that this was the championship win that mattered. This was the championship win that was going to cement Daniel Bryan as one of his generation's best. Unfortunately, injuries would take a lot of time away from Daniel Bryan and make it harder for him to stay in the main event in WWE, but that has nothing to do with this match. Orton and Daniel Bryan are two of the best, and Batista is no slouch, especially with his angle at the time of being the returning big name movie star guy wanting the royal treatment. This was a match that was a lot of fun and is a triple threat match where you believably thought all three guys hated each other and desperately wanted to win to leave WrestleMania as champion. There's a lot of triple threats. Kind of look more like handicap matches on paper. See the recent thing with Orton, Kevin Owens, and Logan Paul. Which was not a main event, and even if it was, wouldn't have made this list. In the top half of our list, we have The Rock versus Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania 17. This would be the second WrestleMania main event for the championship they had after WrestleMania 15. I prefer 17 to the 15 match because 15 match in a lot of ways, it was overshadowed a bit by the Austin McMahon feud. Rock was the corporate champion. He had only held the title since November when he won it at the Survivor Series. It was his first title win. Yes, Rock was doing a great job as champion, but it was as Vince's chosen champion to keep the belt away from Austin. 15 build just really felt like Rock was a pawn of McMahon, whereas WrestleMania 17, Rock had time as a main eventer. He'd won the championship a couple times. Now it was time to play. Now it really felt like Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin were fighting each other because they genuinely wanted to prove once and for all that one was better than the other. The match, of course, has its issues. There is some criticisms about the exactness of the booking. They basically tried to overbook it. But if you watch the match in and of itself by itself, it is an incredible match. Both these men came in and gave 120%, wanting to make sure that people didn't think about 15 anymore. They thought about 17. And of course, they would end up having another match a couple years later at WrestleMania 19 to cap off the trilogy, but we are talking about 17. 17 is my favorite of the three. It makes the list. Number 4 is, of course, the most famous match in WWE history in a lot of ways. Definitely the most famous WrestleMania match, and that is Hogan versus Andre at WrestleMania 3. Move-wise, there's not a lot going on in this match. Andre's body was starting to break down. He just couldn't bounce around like he would have done 3 or 4 years ago. Hogan was, of course, Hogan. He wanted to make sure he took care of himself physically as much as he could while still giving the fans what they wanted to see. Having Bobby the Brain Heenan at ringside helped to make up for all this because when Bobby the Brain is there, everybody's watching Bobby. This is a match that, despite a lot of cons to it on the surface. Andre's lack of mobility, Hogan being the kind of wrestler that wasn't going to do a lot of bumping himself and bouncing around the ring. You would think this wouldn't be a good match. However, the match accomplished everything it needed to accomplish. A live attendance gate that to this day still stands, even though the number has been disputed a few times, as one of the all-time great gate records. An arena that was red hot to see Hogan retain over the backstabber Andre. They did everything they needed to do to send the fans home happy. Journalists around the world, even those that didn't even really like wrestling, had to concede that the energy in the building that you could clearly hear over television feeds was phenomenal. This was what Vince had been promising people for years. An event that was must-see and an energy that just surpassed everything that wrestling had been up until this point. But, as I said, when it comes to the match itself, there's a lot lacking in the physical department, so that's why it does not make the number 1 slot. Or even the top 3. Let's break down the top 3. We have Brock Lesnar versus Drew McIntyre at WrestleMania 36. Now, confession time, I'm a huge fan of both men. Brock Lesnar is, in many ways, the quintessential wrestling heel, especially of the monster heel variety. This is a guy that goes in there and physically imposes himself on any human being on the planet. And it looks believable when he does it. While at the same time, his bullying has a form of wit and charm to it where you can't help but want to see him do more. You want to see Brock Lesnar get his comeuppance, but only after he's had a chance to really dig himself into a deep hole, because that's what people love about Brock. He is a smart ass and a bully, and you do wonder what he's going to do next. But still, this was all about Drew McIntyre ascending. Like many entries on this list, Drew McIntyre won the championship that he needed to prove he is a world main event level talent. While there was some issues with the energy of the crowd, because this was COVID era, this was lockdown era, there was no live crowd. Still, you could feel that Drew honestly believed he needed to win this match. Because if he lost here, even if he won the championship from Brock later, it wouldn't mean as much. This was the WrestleMania main event. This was the most physically dominant champion of the last, maybe ever. At least since Hogan's prime. I mean, Brock just massacred people left and right up to this point as champion. He'd occasionally drop it, but, Drew was a case of he just outfought Brock. He just plain beat Brock straight up, which was exactly what he needed to do, and it was a great match to watch. Both men had a great showing, and that's what I want to see from a guy who's fans of both men. Drew got the win, which was, led to the Drew era. Led to a lot of great matches with Drew. And in turn, because he won it, as I said, without having a crowd in front of him, it was something that created a new storyline for this most recent WrestleMania 4 years later, where Drew felt he had to win it in front of a crowd. It was a thing. There was nothing wrong with this match in and of itself. But it wasn't quite number 1. But before that, we got to discuss number 2, which is a man whose physical dominance did eventually surpass Brock Lesnar's, the Tribal Chief Roman Reigns. At WrestleMania 37, he was challenged by Edge and Daniel Bryan in a triple threat match. Edge had made his comeback. He wanted to win one more championship. Daniel Bryan, well, he just plain loved being champion and truly believed he was physically the best wrestler on earth. But Roman Reigns, he had just begun what would end up being a 4+ year reign as Tribal Chief. This was his first WrestleMania of the Tribal Chief era. He came in as the defending champion. He refused to leave without that championship. He beat down both men. He stacked them. He pinned them. And he left people with just enough hope that one-on-one one of these men might have done it to keep us guessing for another few years about could the Tribal Chief be defeated. We had seen other triple threat matches before WrestleMania. We had mentioned the earlier one where Daniel Bryan won at 30. I feel like, especially with a guy like Edge, who is both a great bumper, looks great when he hits big offensive moves, and Roman Reigns finally having hit his stride as the heel Tribal Chief, a villainous tyrant that refused to let go of the belt. The seeds for this were getting planted in this match. This was it, folks. This match was the perfect storm. You can't ask for a better triple threat scenario than this. You really can't. But you can't ask for a better WrestleMania match. And that is Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 26. That is right, folks. Yes, I am a huge Undertaker fan, so I had to put him on here somewhere, preferably number 1, but these men earned it. This is a match that is generally considered potentially one of the greatest WrestleMania matches of all time. A little bit of background for those who do not know the background. 1 year previous, Shawn Michaels had challenged The Undertaker and his then perfect record at WrestleMania. The two had met many times over the years, but never at WrestleMania. Shawn himself had the nickname of Mr. WrestleMania, as it seemed like no matter where he was on the card, his match was the most memorable match of the night. The man who couldn't be beaten at WrestleMania versus the man who always stole the show at WrestleMania. Two of the biggest living legends in WWE at the time. WrestleMania 25 was an incredible match. But that's just it. It was really just for bragging rights. Undertaker managed to beat Shawn Michaels. And a year later, Shawn could not let it go. He wanted one more chance to do it, to be the definitive WrestleMania wrestler, to be the man to beat the streak, to truly earn the nickname of Mr. WrestleMania, the showstopper, the icon. So he did the only thing he could do, since he couldn't win the championship during this year. And how could he? His mind was constantly distracted by that loss to The Undertaker. And that is, he put his career on the line. Only a couple years removed from Shawn Michaels retiring Ric Flair at WrestleMania, now Shawn found the shoe on the other foot, as he put his career on the line against Undertaker. Undertaker wins, he keeps the streak. And he retires Shawn Michaels, making sure Shawn would no longer steal the show at WrestleMania. The war these two waged, I mean, some people don't rank it as high as some matches in Japan. And I'm not insulting Japanese wrestling at all. Some people might try to argue there's been matches in Mexico that were better. But I can't see it. Pound for pound, this may be, when you look at every element, physically impressive, a great storyline, two wrestlers who made you believe that storyline, and thus that these men were desperate to outcompete each other and to get that win. The charisma, the energy of the crowd, just the need to see this match from a fan. Everybody around the world, as soon as Shawn announced he was going to put his career on the line, knew they had to see this rematch. There was not a single wrestling fan in the world that didn't want to know how this match was going to turn out. That is what makes it the greatest WrestleMania main event of all time, because it created a hype for a match that caught everybody's attention. The storyline was perfect. The build-up was perfect. The wrestlers went out there and gave 120%. No matter how much hype was put behind it, no matter how much the fans tried to say that they would have had to sit there and both put on the greatest match of their lives to be worth the anticipation, the simple fact is they did it. If you're into pro wrestling, this is a must-see match. I don't say that phrase often. I don't like that phrase. You have to see this. You have to like this. But if you like professional wrestling, I don't see how you can't love this match. The emotion is there. The physicality is there. The motivation is there. Every single thing hits perfect. It lived up to expectations. It went beyond most people's expectations. And when it ended with The Undertaker beating Shawn Michaels, even the biggest Shawn Michaels fan knew the way it was done, there were no hard feelings. There was nothing to resent The Undertaker over. There was nothing to hate about the match. Shawn put on the match of his life. But at that point in time, The Undertaker would not be denied. And it would take a few more years and a completely different opponent to finally snap the streak. But that's a story for another time. This has been my 10 favorite WrestleMania main events. Again, I'm not saying that there can be main events that aren't better on one particular factor, but these are the ones I most like to watch and rewatch. Like, comment, subscribe, click the notification bell, make yourself a sandwich, snuggle up with your favorite pet, whatever makes you happy. Because I enjoy the fact that I make something y'all get to watch. And I look forward to next time we have a rambling. And I hope you're with us. I appreciate every view and every viewer. So stay happy, stay healthy, and I'll see y'all down the road.